बोलिए।
पहले वाले को डिलीट कर दीजिएगा। Hello friends, you all are welcomed in the Collegiate-Physics classes. Today we will discuss collision in one dimension. One dimension means along a straight line. So, if there are two bodies and they are making head-on collision, then before collision and after collision, their velocities are along the same straight line. So it is called collision in one dimension. Suppose that there are two bodies of masses m1 and m2 and their velocities are u1 and u2. Along the same straight line. Also suppose that u1 is greater than u2. Then what will happen? Both the bodies will meet at a point both will come in contact after some time, and after that they will be separated. So, before collision, they are moving along the same straight line, and after collision, they are moving along the same straight line. Then such collision will be called collision in one dimension or collision along a straight line. Now, the second is collision in two dimensions. Collision in two dimensions. If the two bodies are colliding and before collision their velocities are in a plane and after collision their velocities are in the same plane, then it is called collision in two dimensions, or it is also called collision in a plane. So, for collision in a plane, it will be necessary that their collision would not be head-on collision. In that case, the velocities before collision and the velocities of the bodies after collision will not be along a straight line. That will be in a plane, so it is called collision in a plane or collision in a two dimension. So, today we will discuss the collision in one dimension of perfect elastic collision in detail. Let us see that. So to discuss the different cases of collision in one dimension, let us suppose that there are two bodies of masses m1 and m2. Their velocities are u1 and u2. Both are moving along the same straight line. They make head-on collision, and after this collision, their velocities become v1 and v2. From this situation, it is clear that u1 is greater than u2 and v2 is greater than v1. This is perfect elastic collision. So we will apply two laws. First law will be law of conservation of momentum, and the second will be law of conservation of energy. Applying these two laws, we will get the velocity of the two bodies after the collision. So let us see it. Before collision, the momentum of the bodies is equal to m1 u1 plus m2 u2, and after collision their momentum is m1 v1 plus m2 v2. Now, applying the law of conservation of momentum, the momentum before collision and the momentum after collision both will be equal. This is called law of conservation of momentum. So, applying law of conservation of momentum, we get m1 u1 plus m2 u2 is equal to m1 v1 plus m2 v2, or m1 into u1 minus v1 is equal to m2 into v2 minus u2. Let this be equation number 1. Now, applying law of conservation of kinetic energy. This law states that before collision, the sum of kinetic energy of the two bodies and after collision, the sum of kinetic energy of the two bodies must be equal. This is called law of conservation of kinetic energy. So, applying this law, half m1 u1 squared plus half m2 u2 squared is equal to half m1 v1 squared plus half m2 v2 squared, or m1 u1 square minus v1 square is equal to m2 v2 square minus u2 square, or m1 u1 minus u2 u1 minus v1 into u1 plus v1 is equal to m2 into v2 minus u2 into v2 plus u2. Equation number 2. From equation number 1 and equation number 2, we can say that u1 plus v1 is equal to u2 plus v2. We get u1 plus v1 is equal to u2 plus v2. Or u1 minus u2 is equal to v2 minus v1. See, since u1 is greater than u2, so u1 minus u2 is the velocity of approach before collision, and since v2 is greater than v1, so this gives the velocity of separation after collision. So there is one conclusion in perfect elastic collision in one dimension. This conclusion is that the velocity of approach is equal to velocity of separation. In perfect elastic collision, the velocity of approach before collision of the two bodies will be equal to the velocity of separation after collision of the two particles or two bodies. The velocity of approach of two bodies before collision is equal to velocity of separation of the two bodies in perfect elastic collision. Friends, this is the conclusion of perfect elastic collision in one dimension. After this, in the next lecture, we will calculate what is the velocity of the bodies after collision. Till we will stop this lecture at this point. Thank you for attending the class.